Labyrinths is brought to you by Knox Robinson Productions. Please consider becoming a patron. For as little as $5 a month, you can listen to Labyrinths ad-free.
Visit patreon.com/Knox Robinson to learn more.
I grew up in the Seattle area, and then I moved over to Ellensburg, Washington for college. And then I never left. I love it here. So I stayed. It's just kind of like an old country town. You could almost blink and drive through the whole town. I was single. I was living on my own. So it was the first place I've ever lived by myself. And I felt so independent and happy that I was at the point where I was like, if I don't end up finding my human, I'm okay with that. I would do everything with my dog. I hiked all the time, probably 3 days a week, I'd say. So that's kind of the realm of where I was at. Very, very happy and very strong and independent woman. And then my now husband's ex-girlfriend, who worked for the sheriff's office, hired men to kidnap me, drug me, and ultimately leave me for dead.
Feeling lost?
Then you're in the right place.
I'm Amanda Knox.
And I'm Christopher Robinson.
And this is Labyrinths.
That was the voice of Janie Avey. And the story she's telling us today took place from 2014 to 2022.
So this woman's name is Callie Knudsen. I first met her in 2013. That was when I first moved to Ellensburg. And I started dating this guy. And he took me to this restaurant in town that's called Wing Central. She was our server. And I asked him how they knew one another. And he said that they were friends, that she was interested in him, but it wasn't a mutual vibe, so they're just friends. That was the first time I met her. And then kind of a month or so later, she messaged me on Facebook asking if I wanted to work at Wing Central. And it was a cool opportunity. So I was like, sure, I'm new here. It would be a good way to meet local people. So I took the job, and she kind of took me under her wing, trained me, all the good stuff. And then about probably 2 months later, she was messaging my boyfriend at the time, telling him that I was flirting with other customers and that I was flirting with my coworkers and pretty much making him insecure. And so that had an impact on our relationship. We ended up splitting up for other reasons, but that definitely didn't help. Also, she would message my coworkers telling them that I was saying terrible things about them. A little bit later, she would message my boss also complaining about me and my closing duties and saying that I was making mistakes and pretty much just trying to sabotage my relationship, my friendships with my coworkers, try to get me fired and jobless. It was constantly picking at me, and I don't really know why, but it was like I had a target on my back.
And would she do this even after you and your boyfriend split up?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
It was very interesting. I just had a target. And then the last incident that happened, we had a work meeting. It was a training where you went over all the things not to do, don't tell customers that it's closing time, yada, yada. And 2 days later, there was a Yelp review, the only review I've ever gotten. And it said that I was the server, and that basically it listed everything that we went over in our meeting, saying that I was doing all those things. And my boss at the time was pretty sure this is Callie that posted this. And we never know. But after that, she ended up having her second baby. So she quit and left Wing Central. And then I didn't really cross paths with her for probably 2 years.
2 years after Callie left Wing Central, Janie's friend Aaron invited her and her new boyfriend over to a barbecue he was hosting. It was at this barbecue that she would again cross paths with Callie, who she discovered was dating Aaron.
And she walked in and we both looked at each other, and it was we knew. Both of us avoided each other. I stayed outside the whole time. She stayed inside. That's when we had first learned we would be around each other more.
What were your feelings at that time? Just
my heart dropped because I never confronted her about the things that she did at Wing Central, because I'm not like that. If someone wants to hate on me, they can. There's nothing I could do to prevent her from what she was doing, right?
Right.
So I just completely avoided her.
And then she quit. And so you're like, okay, like relief.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm safe for a while.
Yeah.
But I definitely was really sad. Callie has like a history in Ellensburg, and she's very definitely different. She's very like flamboyant and very expressive, and just like has to be the center of attention when you'd go out to bars. You could definitely hear her. Like you could feel the energy in the room. My best friend, Molly, is also friends with them. So I was like, cool, I'm going to have to see her more, and I don't want to see her more. So I was really upset. And after that moment, the friend group knew I wouldn't come around if she was there. So I'd always ask, like, is she going to be there? Because I'm not dealing with it. So, I mean, I tried. And then 2 weeks later, Molly had invited me to a girls' weekend in Prosser. So it's like 30 women that get together and you drink wine, and it's amazing. And we had a great time. And then Sunday came, and it was time for us to leave. And Callie had messaged Molly and said, is Janie still there? And she was like, no, why? And she was like, well, I have some news to share with you of her talking shit about you. And it looked like a screenshot of my conversation with my roommate at the time. And it did look like I was saying horrible things about Molly, like not good stuff. And Molly had sent it to me and was like, what is this? I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, you tell me. And she's like, it's apparently your conversation with your roommate. I went and looked at my phone because I was like, was I wasted? And I didn't know. Not even remotely my conversation that I've had with my roommate.
So was it like photoshopped? Like how?
What I believe happened was she had a burner phone, because we learned later on that she had like 5 phones. She had a burner phone and she was having a conversation pretending to be me and my roommate, then saved that burner phone number as my name.
Oh my gosh.
So I was actually really scared at that moment, because I was like, if someone's impersonating me, like I have a career, I have a boyfriend, like I was very violated and pissed, and I knew it was probably her.
And it's also like it's just a little beyond. Like, how do you go to that length?
Right. Yeah. So after that happened, I actually went to the police. I print out like all these screenshots, and I just said, I just want this documented. I think it's really creepy that someone is impersonating me. And I said that I thought it was Callie. So I went to the local police department. She worked at the sheriff's office, but I just said, I just want you to know if something were to happen to me, this has gone on in my life.
Yeah. So can I pause there for a moment? Because going to the police is a fairly significant step. And fair enough, because like it's one thing to just talk shit about someone behind their back. I mean, it sounds like at the time you felt fixated upon, like borderline stalked. So did you at that moment fear for your safety?
Yeah, I got home and I was like learning all this information. It was kind of dark out. When I walked inside, it was pitch black and you have to go up these steep stairs. I definitely was like starting to get triggered a little bit. I was starting to feel very violated, because in some of the text messages, it was also like, I'm going to go hiking today. I need to get my butt into shape. So I'm like, this person knows that I hike a lot. I felt creeped out for sure. And there was something in me that was like, this isn't a coincidence. Every single sign I had of things happening to me throughout this whole process, I had this deep feeling that it was her.
Okay, so you went to the police. You have some documented evidence of someone who is impersonating you. How do you describe to the police what you think may be happening and what you're afraid might happen?
It's hard to even explain those messages. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for people to get it, let alone an older man that like doesn't use social media, that doesn't do the screenshots. I just did the best to explain it. And I kind of explained that I had a good history with Callie, and that I didn't find it a coincidence that I haven't had anything happen to me like this before. And I just crossed paths with her, and now this is what happened. And he did tell me that they've seen this before in like high school students. And he said that there's not a lot they can do, that there's like apps that people can use to like disguise their phone number. So they just documented it. And
yeah. So like basically they said like the law doesn't really offer you anything. Like, she is technically legally allowed to impersonate you and try to destroy your reputation, and there's nothing you can do about it.
If there was actual threats, then they could have investigated it more, but there was no threats on there. So she wasn't saying like, I'm going to kill you. Instead, they just documented it, and I freaking had to go into hiding, basically.
I think it's worth pausing to like reflect on how there are like lots of ways to hurt people. And not all of them have to do with physical harm or the threat of physical harm. So here you are going, I am being harmed by this person and it's creeping me out. And what kind of person would even do that?
It does irk me, like looking back. They didn't even interview her, didn't even ask her a single thing about it.
So at that point, when you talked to them about feeling creeped out by her, did you say that you felt unsafe?
Yeah, so when she sent the screenshot to Molly, I can't remember the verbiage, but she said, I can't believe she talked shit about you. I want to, it was like punch her. I think it was punch her. I sent the screenshot to the officer so that he could see it because I was like, she did threaten. She literally said that she wanted to physically harm me. Nothing was done.
Yeah, like just to share a personal anecdote, I've definitely had the experience of someone even making like explicit threats, like I am going to show up outside of your work in broad daylight. I don't care if I get caught. I'm going to pick you up and bring you in a van. I'm going to take you into a basement. I'm going to electrocute you. I'm going to rape you. Very explicit. And I bring this to the authorities and they're like, well, he didn't say that he was going to come at a certain day or time, so we can't actually do anything. And I'm like, he's threatening to kill me.
They're like, we'll wait till it happens.
What? Yeah, great. Okay, cool.
Hey, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. This podcast can only exist thanks to listener support. So please consider becoming a patron. Visit patreon.com/KnoxRobinson.
So then what happens? So after you go to the police, they shrug their shoulders.
Yeah.
What do you think is going down?
I completely avoided her. I blocked her on everything. Because I think I had her on like Snapchat and I didn't even realize it. So I blocked her on everything. She had sent me a message because a lot of people were calling her out and basically saying, just admit if you did this. Like it kind of points to you. She sent me this long text message about how she's confused, like someone's playing her, and I blocked her. I didn't even respond. Like, I never, ever responded to her. I haven't talked to her probably since like 2014. I didn't affiliate myself at all. I would avoid her at all costs. Like, if I saw her vehicle in a grocery store parking lot, I would just leave.
In December 2018, Janie went to meet her boyfriend at his cabin in Clay Elum, Washington. He was running a bit late, so she headed down the road to Erin's family cabin, where there was a party going on with a bunch of her friends. Though Janie had blocked Callie on social media, that didn't stop other people from posting their own snaps and stories. And judging by what happened next, Janie figured that Callie must have seen her hanging out with Erin, her ex, and she'd gotten jealous.
She obviously saw that, and that, I think, triggered what was going to be the end of my life. So the cabin, it's his parents that own it. And there's like an HOA in there. Well, his mom was working for Alaskan Airlines, and she got this email from this lady named Anita Frangella. And the email said that she was a resident and that she was walking her German Shepherd and noticed people partying, peeing in the snow, throwing beer cans, basically just like saying that the partying going on is excessive. Well, none of that was happening. But Erin's mom asked, like, what is going on? Like, who is this? And in the email, oddly enough, it mentioned their next door neighbors who Erin's parents have known for a long time. And it said, I'm friends with Sean and Kareen. Well, Kareen doesn't ever go by Kareen. She goes by Carrie. That's all she's ever known. But if you look up the addresses, it'll show you the legal names of the owners. So that's how she got that. Come to find out, that was actually Callie that sent it. At the time, we didn't know it. We just assumed. And then after the email, my phone got stolen out of my hands. I lived alone, and I got a knock at the door, and it was my birthday. So it wouldn't have been surprising, like, if a friend stopped by. And I also was expecting the guy I was seeing to show up because we were going to go out to dinner that day. I opened the door, and there's this guy, and he looks like he struggles with drug addiction. And he has this, like, ripped, baggy black sweatshirt on, black pants, and he did not look approachable at all. And I just felt my entire life like leave my body. And I froze, and I had my phone in my hand, and he's like, "Hey, can I borrow your phone? My car broke down." And I was like, give me a second. Meanwhile, my dog's barking. I had music on. So I'm like, he's either going to rape me, kidnap me, or kill me. That's what's going to happen. I had a delayed response. Like, I froze, and he snatched the phone out of my hand and took off running. And I don't know what in my mind thought to do this, but I took off running after him in my socks, in the mud, basically. I get out to the street. I see him get into another vehicle that was like waiting for him, and they take off driving. A lady stopped. She called 911 for me. Later, it was found out that Callie had hired them to kidnap me, but the guy didn't want to do that. So he initially was like, okay, well, if she just wants Janie's cell phone, we'll just steal her cell phone. Later, my phone was recovered in evidence because the guys like threw it in a bush somewhere.
Okay, so you're at home. This strange man shows up at your house, snatches your phone, runs away with it, gets into a car with someone else, drives away. How is it that ultimately all of what was happening came to light? Like, you don't know who these people are. Like, they could have just been completely random people.
The guy I was seeing, he lives in Kirkland, right? So he's used to, people do steal and theft happens. In Ellensburg, we don't really have like homeless people because the weather is either extremely hot in the summer or too cold. You can't live outside. So homeless isn't as common here. So there's not as high of like thefts and crimes. And I was telling him about it, and I was like, this is just super weird. Like, of all the homes to choose. And he's like, Janie, he was probably just checking the doors and just wanting to like rummage through your things. I was like, no, I was targeted. He had to have known I was there because I had music playing, my dog's barking, my vehicle's parked right next door. Like, there's just so many things.
And obviously, if there was music playing and dogs barking, that's the last kind of place that some homeless person is going to try to like jingle the lock to try to see if he can get in.
Yeah. And I had also learned 2 days before, I was bartending like once a week at this bar in town, and my coworker was like, hey, are you seeing a new guy? Because someone called and asked when you work so that they can send you flowers. And I was like, who was it? And he was like, it was Ellensburg Floral. And I was like, yes, I'm seeing someone, but he just brought me flowers the other day to my main job that I work Monday through Friday. Like, anyone who's going to send me flowers, wouldn't you do it to that job? Why would you do it to the bar scene? So I reached out to Ellensburg Floral, and I was like, was anyone trying to send flowers? They're like, no, we haven't gotten any calls. So when I knew that happened, and then all of a sudden my phone got stolen, like my hair stood up. I was like, something's off here. So I was nervous that it could be a guy that's stalking me, or it was her.
I mean, it's amazing to me just hearing you talk about this, because the lengths that she went to pretend to be other people, making new email accounts, like calling on behalf of other like actual businesses. It seems like this is not just an insane person. Like, this is someone who is very specifically, knowingly and willingly stalking somebody.
And it's super creepy because like she created that fake email, that name. She created the name Ann Anderson that reviewed me on Yelp. We learned that she created other names as well. She created about 6 different aliases. I was definitely getting freaked out because someone's calling, trying to send flowers and trying to figure out my schedule, that's not normal. So that's when I went to the police the day after my phone was stolen. So I reported it. But I went again and I was like, listen, like something's off. And I gave him the phone number that called Blue Rock, which was the place I was working. So I gave him everything and I just said something is wrong. And I did not stay back at home anymore because that guy knows where I live. Like, what if he tells other people, oh, this single girl just lives by herself? So I literally went and stayed with my two friends. And I felt so robbed of my independence because I was getting really scared and paranoid. Like I felt like I was being followed sometimes. Like, you know, your mind just spirals out when you go through like the trauma.
And you have justified reason to be paranoid. Like somebody's trying to figure out your movements. They know where you live.
So at that same time, the day after my phone was stolen, Callie's house was burglarized. I watched the police body cameras. She instantly named myself.
But not just her. Her ex, Aaron, as well. For at this point, Janie and Aaron were dating.
That's who she assumed burglarized her home. So the police did a whole report, and that's an investigation. And then I have my investigation, right? So her back door was kicked in, $1,000 cash was stolen, her laptop was stolen, and then she wrote in the mirror, "Fuck you, Anita." Remember, she made the name Anita Frangella? So she wrote, "Fuck you, Anita," and blamed us for the burglary. Later, it was found out once she was arrested, they did a search warrant on her home, and the laptop was recovered. And she had paid the guys $1,000, and she was trying to make an insurance claim to like get the $1,000 back, basically. So she burglarized her own home.
And tried to frame you for a crime.
Yep.
Aaron was the police's primary suspect and was intensely interrogated about the burglary. However, after a day of snowmobiling with multiple witnesses, he had a solid alibi. He supplied law enforcement with the Anita Frangilla email, and soon the two separate investigations from Callie and Janie would become intertwined. The detective's suspicions were heightened when the daughter of the jail's superintendent explained she was dating one of the men Callie had hired. That man eventually came clean about what Callie had planned.
They decided to have the men wear wires. And so every time Callie would meet up with them, they had audio recordings of her plot. So in some of the recordings, she said that she wanted them to tie me up, use duct tape, tie me to a chair, inject me with heroin, and take my cell phone, all of this crazy stuff that she said in the recordings. I just want to kill her so bad. She also would laugh when she was talking about it. She was like, I'm going to laugh so hard if she goes to jail for burglarizing my home. She asked someone to go to my work and to get our Wi-Fi password so that she could try to get onto my work computer. She was just like laughing carelessly and like threatening them. He even said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" She was like, "I'm sure. Are you sure?" And it's all public knowledge. So like anyone questioning the truth behind this, it's all out there. It was definitely heartbreaking. I remember the first time I heard it, I almost threw up. They got all that evidence. They finally realized, okay, we have something here. We could arrest her right now. The police came to my work. They sat me down and they said, "Callie Knutson is hiring men to kidnap you and drug you with heroin." And I just like started crying. And I was like, first of all, heroin? Like, what the hell? Like, why? It made me sick to my stomach. Why would you ever want to do that to someone? I even said, what have I ever done to her to deserve something like this? And they were like, honestly, this is like a Hollywood style story. Like there's a lot to it. They couldn't tell me everything at the time, but they were like, it's a lot and she's passionate about this and she wants it done. And so they told me that I couldn't go home, that I couldn't do my gym routine, that I couldn't post on social media, and I had to check in with a detective every day. Because obviously they can't have someone like surveilling me 24/7, but they needed time to get everything prepared. And they asked if they could use my house as a sting operation to essentially see if she would go through with the plan. So she had also given the guys a piece of paper that said my age, my birth date, what vehicle I drive, where I go to the gym, my work hours, where I work. And it also had on there where I do my laundry. So she had been stalking me and following my movements for I don't know how long, and literally had the audacity to type this up. They found a copy of it at her work in the waste bin. So that was also in evidence. And then from there, I basically laid low and I couldn't tell anyone. I did tell my best friend, Kendall, because how do you learn something like that and not tell anyone? Like, that's not realistic. So it was about 2 days that went by, and then they told me today is the day. They had me call in sick to Blue Rock. I met the officers there. I gave them the key to my house, and I left my vehicle. The officer took me to Kendall's house, and we basically just sat and waited until they called us and said that she was arrested. But sure enough, she left her son home alone. He was 12 or 14 at the time. She literally said in the wiretap, like, she left her phone so that it would ping at her residence. The officers witnessed her park off of the alleyway, like on the main road, and walk on foot. She was wearing all black, a black sweatshirt, and she was bleach blonde at the time. She had her hair pulled up into a bun and black hair extensions with a beanie, a black beanie on. And she entered the residence. There was like 4 or 5 officers in my house that took her into custody. When they were searching her, they found the Anita email, the address, and the password in her pocket. And then they found 9 oxy pills on her person. And then the remaining 21 pills were in a bottle in the car with her name on them. So she was planning to not only have me be injected with heroin, but apparently she was going to give me a lethal dose of Oxycontin as well. Then she was arrested, and that definitely wasn't the ending.
So you're at your best friend's house and you get the call that she's been arrested.
Yeah.
So you know for sure that she came to your house with the intent to harm you. What was it like getting that call?
Oh my God. It's like the hardest thing to explain, because it's like you are scared to death that someone was actually going to do that, but you're also like, I could have just died today. But you're also glad that she finally like is being put away, right? It was just a whirlwind of like, I wouldn't even say bittersweet, because like, how is there any sweet part of that? It was definitely life-changing. And it was one of those moments where it's like watching your life flash before your eyes. If that's like the best way to even describe it. It's like if you were about to fall off a cliff and you're hanging and someone pulls you back. That's literally what it felt like. And I remember walking around like totally in a daze for like a week, because all I could think was like, I almost wouldn't have been here.
You know, one thing that you mentioned that I wanted to touch upon before we get into the long legal process that then followed was the fact that you made us this sort of comment of, there's a record out there in case anybody still doesn't believe me. Like, I think this is true of everyone. We try to sort of downplay when things pop up. We try to make excuses for like, oh, that's just a totally random thing, or it's a coincidence, or like, oh, people steal cell phones all the time. That doesn't mean anything. It's almost like you feel like either the world is crazy or you are crazy.
Yeah.
Like, how do you grapple with that? What were the people around you in your life? How did they process it? Were they trying to like downplay it to make you feel better? Like, what was going on?
So everyone in my immediate circle was very supportive. Everyone believed everything, even though it was hard to believe. So a lot of people, when it came out, were like, I'm not surprised. Like, I went to school with her. This doesn't shock me. A lot of people were coming forward and sharing similar stories. And of course, it went on social media. And so there was comments that I had read, and a lot of the comments were sharing their own victimized stories by her. So that was interesting. However, there's always the people who aren't supportive. People on her circle and on her side were saying that it's not true, that she was framed, that I called CPS on her one time, like all these crazy rumors. And that's the hard thing too, is so many rumors about myself and so many versions of the story that were floating around. And it made me so angry. And that was really, really hard. You want everyone to know the truth, but like there's no way that you can tell them, right? I mean, aside from now I can, but at the time when you're going through it, you can't. You just have to sit there and take it. Like I'm a very sweet, open person, and I don't think it's fair for all these people to sit there and like judge who I am and my character based off of what they hear versus like actually knowing me. This is a crazy story, let alone in a small town like Ellensburg. It felt like so invasive. Like I didn't even stay in Ellensburg for like a week because I would go to the store and someone would be like, Janie, oh my God, and ask me about it. And it's like, I don't want to talk about it right now. And I felt like everyone was staring at me, and you don't know if they're supporting you, if they don't believe you, if they hate you, if they think you're crazy. Like you just have to sit there, and that brings so much vulnerability. And I'm a very like extroverted person. So for me to become so introverted sucked. She ended up bailing out on $350,000 bail and then proceeded to inject herself into my life for 3 years until trial.
And it's amazing to me that it took so long and that they allowed her to be on bail when she had clearly had the intent to cause incredible amounts of harm to you.
She even violated, so I had a no contact order that said she couldn't come within 1,000 feet of Blue Rock and my other work and then my home and all that good stuff. She parked like 2 cars away from me at Safeway, and I called her in. She got arrested for violating. So we had a hearing to revoke her bail because that's a violation. The judge said there was no proof that she knowingly violated, so he just let her remain out.
Wow. And then in the meantime, she's again spreading the rumors. I'm the victim here.
Yeah. It was honestly really miserable because I would pass her driving in a vehicle, and that is like devastating. I mean, who should have to pass their perpetrator? So every time that happened to me, I just felt violated. I felt the fact that someone tried to take my life and they can just live as if nothing happened. At one point, while she was out on bail, her employer like let her go. And in that process, it allowed her to collect unemployment during the pandemic. So she was getting additional money, and she was probably making like $50,000 on unemployment and stimulus checks and all this. Meanwhile, I'm struggling to even be able to go to work to make money because I'm suffering so much. It was really hard. I had a lot of breakdowns. I became an introvert. I was scared to go places. I was scared that she was going to hire someone to kill me. There was times I'd park somewhere and she would park a space away from me, get out and walk in front of my vehicle and have a face like she just was on top of the world. I called it into law enforcement and they said she wasn't in violation because the order doesn't protect a perimeter around my person. But domestic violence orders and sexual assault ones, those protect the person, like you can't knowingly remain in the area. But with harassment protection orders, it's not like that. It makes you feel like you can't go anywhere. So if I was to go to a restaurant and she was to sit in a booth next to me, she can do that. And that was hard because my protection order said she cannot indirectly or directly intimidate me, threaten, etc. Well, how do you prove intimidation? So my order basically just didn't even matter because I would say I am intimidated, like I'm letting you know I'm intimidated. But law enforcement, like they can't prove intimidation, I guess. She also stopped at nothing to take me to court. So I had a no contact order in the trial. I also filed for a harassment order. I wanted 1,000 feet from my work, my home. That wasn't in the pretrial no contact order. So I petitioned for it. Went before a judge shaking, barely able to speak. I ended up getting the order. She filed countless motions, one time to modify the order. She filed to terminate the order. And she would also always file these around holidays or like my birthday or when I had any special event going on in my life, she would impede in my life and do that.
Janie and Aaron were engaged by this point. And according to Janie, Callie tried to file an order against Aaron the day before their wedding.
So also prevented us from going on our honeymoon because if he didn't go to court, it would go into place. It was not granted, so it didn't matter. But she just probably took me to court like 8 times in 3 years. And each time I would just shake and want to throw up because I don't even want to be in a room with her. I'm thankful now for the experience because I'm a very strong person. And obviously, everything I went through, I think it will make me be an amazing advocate for other victims of crimes. But it was hell. And then when trial happened, I was so thankful because there was, I think the clerk said either 2,000 or 3,000 people that were listening in on the trial happening, which I was really thankful for because they can hear the evidence being presented, right? So I'm like, that's official. I mean, they're talking about the evidence. Like, she can sit there, and this whole time she was saying that she was going to be found not guilty and the charges would be dropped. Like, she spread so many rumors trying to make false reality feel real for herself.
So ultimately, how did this all wrap itself up in court?
Yeah, so we had trial. She said the whole time that she was going to take the stand, but lo and behold, she never did.
When you heard the verdict, first of all, where were you? Were you in the courtroom?
Oh my gosh. You know, we have a large courtroom and the audio was not working that day, conveniently. So we had to do it in lower district, which is a small room, like probably 2 master bedroom sizes, like not big for a trial that over 2,000 people had been listening to. So I was like, I'll let you know when the verdict happens. So the prosecutor takes me and like puts me in a back room and was like, we're going to bring you in this way. They're trying to make it so I felt like safe, but I could still hear it. It was like 3 rows of chairs. It was pathetic how small it was. The judge's audio wasn't working, and she was very gentle, like soft-spoken, so I could barely hear her. The first thing she did, she said, okay, and you guys are saying that you can't come to an agreement on attempted murder. And then all of a sudden, I heard hung jury. My heart sunk because I was like, are you kidding me? Like, did these people even listen to everything? I don't know how this works. So I took off. I like stormed out of the room, and down the hallway is like tons of law enforcement because they all like worked really hard on this case. So the courtroom was packed. I can barely get out. I take off running and I go into my victim advocate's office and I sink to the floor and I sob harder than I've ever cried in my entire life. And I was like choking. I was like, I can't go through this again. Like, I cannot do this. I'm going to move states. Like, I won't be here anymore. I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden, our friend who's a detective came in and he's like, hey, they're reading the verdict right now. She was just found hung verdict on attempted murder. So halfway through the charges, I go back into the room. I can barely even hear what's happening. I'm literally shaking. The detective on the case, his wife is like holding me, hugging me because my family wasn't there. They don't live in Ellensburg. So that was how I learned. That was how I found out. She ended up being found guilty. I think the verdict took 3 days. It was like 6 people felt attempted murder, or no, 8 to 4, I think was the ratio. They were just struggling with the verbiage of the charge. But she was found guilty of attempted assault in the first degree, attempted kidnapping in the first degree, criminal solicitation to commit assault in the first degree. There's 2 charges for that. And then criminal solicitation to commit kidnapping in the first degree. There's 2 charges for that. Possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver, residential burglary, making a false or misleading statement to a public servant, false claims or proof, theft in the first degree, and criminal impersonation in the first degree. She was sentenced to 20.25 years. And of course, she thought that she would get to go back home and was going to ask for a report date, but they took her into custody right then. And it was a huge weight lifted off my chest. Like, we ended up going and celebrating in town at a brewery that we love going to, and everyone was there. Like, there was some law enforcement that stopped by and like said hi to me and like gave me a hug because it was good for them for closing the case and doing such solid work. But it was a wild, wild ride, and it never ends also. So even though Callie is incarcerated, my husband, he works for law enforcement. Her family has stopped at nothing to file complaints about my husband to try to get him fired. So
wow,
it never ends for us.
Do you feel like you are out of the labyrinth at this point, or where are you on this journey?
Yeah, I feel very healed. I took time. I actually left my job that I'd been working for like 5 years and focused on my mental health, focused on me kind of just figuring out what I wanted to do in life. After healing, obviously now I work as a victim advocate and I love it. I'm good. I am healed. I will never forgive her. And I personally don't need to. You know, there's some people who are like, I want to forgive, or they go and they put everything into God and everything. And I believe in God, but I don't feel like she deserves the respect of me accepting what happened. And also I can live with that. You know, some people need to in order to like get closure. I definitely don't.
Well, and she certainly hasn't said she was sorry or admitted or anything.
Her mindset right now, I guarantee you, the only thing she thinks is, man, I shouldn't have hired someone. I should have just done it myself. She would have done it all over again. She just would have done it a different way. I think that down the road, my husband and I will probably move states, just get out. Right now, we're enjoying it. You know, we own a home and it's fun, and we have all of our friends and our families on this side. So I definitely think, though, long haul, we'll leave states. But I'm good on my journey. Like, I think these past couple months is the happiest I've ever been. I mean, I get happy and emotionally ecstatic about the little things now because I'm just happy that I get to experience them.
Right. The gratitude to just be.
Seriously. I mean, I just feel like I learned a lot about myself, and I feel like such a strong woman, as I'm sure you do too. Like, we've gone through experiences that are once in a lifetime. Like, not everyone goes through that same situation, but you come out on top, right? And yeah, at the time it was scary and it was hard and it was sad, but you also learned a ton about yourself.
What specifically did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I can be pretty resilient. Resiliency is huge. I know that if anything tragic happens in my life, I can get through this because I went through something that I never thought I could get through, and I made it out on top.
Do you feel like the world around you understands what you went through, or is that still something that is only in the intimate part of your life?
I think that after trial, I truly do believe everyone believes it and understands me. I wish there was a way for people to hear the wiretaps. Those wiretaps show a very manipulative, dark, and scary person. I mean, there's still her family that obviously believes that she's innocent. I've made peace with that. That's okay. That's their family member. They never even like apologized or made a statement about like them being sorry for what I've had to go through. If they even listened to this, they would probably try to reach out to you and be like, do you want to hear the other side of the story? Which there isn't another side.
Yeah, it's frustrating when people say that. Because I remember even when I was going through my thing, everyone's like, well, the truth is probably in between somewhere. And it's like, no, in some cases, someone is just being fucked over.
Yes, literally.
That said, it's always good to be thorough. And if you're curious, we encourage you to read the Court of Appeals ruling that upheld Callie Knutsen's convictions in February 2024. We've left a link in the episode description. As for Callie, she's currently serving her 20-year sentence at the Washington Corrections Center for Women. We hope she gets the help she needs.
In the meantime, get lost with us. Find us on Twitter, @AmandaKnox.
@ManUnderBridge.
You can learn more about our work and how to support it at knoxrobinson.com. Please, leave us a 5-star review, tell your friends, and if you've got a labyrinthine story of your own, drop us a line.
Labyrinths is brought to you by Knox Robinson Productions. This episode was written and produced by us. Our managing producer is Andre Sapp, our assistant producer is Jasper Merrill, and our theme music is by Josh Budo Karp.
Fun fact, for every hour of Labyrinths you enjoy, we put in dozens of hours researching, outreaching, interviewing, scripting, editing, and audio engineering.
What keeps us going?
Coffee. So if you're enjoying Labyrinths, please buy us a coffee.
Head over to patreon.com/KnoxRobinson where you can make a monthly donation.
Thanks for getting lost with us.